Today, we are going to talk about Chapter 3, which is the ethical issues in counseling practice. This chapter will explore essential ethical principles in counseling, covering topics like balancing client and counselor needs, ethical decision making, confidentiality, cultural considerations, diagnosis, and managing boundaries. So, what is ethics in counseling? Ethics in counseling are concerned with doing what is best for the client. Ethics are important to protect both the client and the counselor. Ethics involve complex decision making beyond just following rules. So there are different types of ethics. The first one is mandatory ethics. It is the minimum standards for professional conduct. And there is the aspirational ethics, which are aiming to serve clients' best interests. And then fear-based ethics, which is avoiding punishment rather than focusing on client welfare. And lastly is the positive ethics, which is striving to do the best for clients. In counseling, a counselor must recognize and manage their own needs to avoid ethical dilemmas. Self-awareness is crucial in maintaining ethical boundaries. Also, ethical practice requires avoiding exploitation or harm to clients. In other words, counselors must be self-aware to avoid ethical dilemmas where their needs interfere with clients' welfare. Maintaining boundaries is crucial to ethical practice and preventing harm to clients. Ethical issues require thoughtful judgment and adherence to ethical codes. Therefore, here are the key steps in ethical decision-making process. The first one is identifying the problem and then evaluating potential issues and stakeholders' rights. And then next is consulting relevant ethics codes, then considering applicable laws, seeking diverse consultation, brainstorming options, assessing consequences, and lastly is deciding and following up. Next is informed consent. Informed consent is both a legal and ethical requirement. It fosters trust and collaboration in the therapeutic relationships. The key elements that included are the codes of counseling, confidentiality limits, counselor qualifications, and risks and benefits. So, ano nga ba ang confidentiality? Confidentiality is the ethical obligation to protect client information. It is a privileged communication that provides legal protection in court. It is also crucial for trust in the therapeutic relationship, and counselors must explain confidentiality clearly to clients. So, ang confidentiality is ang key para makapag-build ka ng trust with your client, and the counselors are obligated na protektahan ang impormasyon ng kanilang mga kliyente. And a clear communication about confidentiality limits and exceptions is crucial. Pero ang confidentiality ay minsan merong mga exceptions. Confidentiality must be breached in specific situations like child abuse, threats of harm to self or others, legal mandates, and etc. It's important to inform clients about these exceptions to safeguard their welfare. Next, ethical issues is ethical issues from a multicultural perspective. Ethical practice must consider clients' cultural context because current theories may be culturally biased and require expansion. Therapists must remain sensitive to cultural diversity and avoid imposing their values. So, ang mga counselors ay dapat mag-adapt sa kanilang practice and i-consider ang background or cultural background ng kanilang mga clients, and they should avoid imposing their values sa kanilang mga clients. Western theories may need expansion to address diverse cultural contexts. So, sa assessment and diagnosis, they must also consider yung mga cultural factors para ma-avoid nilang ma-mislabel ang mga behaviors. The DSM-5 also emphasizes awareness of bias and cultural nuances in diagnosis. So, merong iba't ibang different theories na nag-i-impact kung paano i-approach ng mga counselors ang kanilang assessment. Some prioritize diagnosis, others see it as a secondary to the client relationship. But ethical issues can arise when diagnosis is used solely for insurance purposes. We now move on to evidence-based practice or EBP. EBP integrates research, clinical expertise, and client characteristics. Its challenges include oversimplification of complex human change, and it may not address all clients' needs, especially those seeking meaning beyond symptom relief. So, ang EBP ay nagko-combine ng mga researchers with clinical expertise. But it can oversimplify complex human issues. And yung EBP, hindi niya nami-meet yung lahat ng needs ng clients, especially yung mga naghahanap lang ng mga symptom relief. Next ethical issue in counseling practice is what we called multiple relationships. Multiple relationships involve dual roles that counselors may have with clients. So, ethical challenges arise from the power dynamics in these relationships. Kaya counselors must manage these roles thoughtfully to prevent exploitation or harming clients. So, paano nga ba natin ma-minimize yung risks in multiple relationships? So, ang mga counselors daw ay dapat mag-weigh ng mga potential benefits versus risks of dual roles. So, here's a guideline for managing multiple relationships that includes establishing boundaries early, involving clients in boundary discussions, consulting with professionals, and lastly is self-monitoring motivations and needs. So, napakahalaga ng pag-i-establish ng boundaries with our clients. Maintaining boundaries is very critical in counseling. Counselors must distinguish between helpful boundary crossings and harmful boundary violations to avoid blurring professional roles. So, next is social media and ethics. Ethical concerns may arise from social media interactions with clients. So, here are recommendations for managing social media presence that includes limiting online sharing, including social networking policies and informed consent, regularly updating privacy settings, and many more. So, how can one become an ethical counselor? Despite following ethical codes which are essential, they do not provide all the answers. The best thing to do is to continue our self-reflection and consultation, which are the key to achieving ethical practice. Ethical issues are complex and require ongoing examination throughout one's career. So, ang mga ethical issues ay hindi yan natatapos. Kaya ang dapat nating gawin ay patuloy tayong mag-reflect sa ating mga sarili at mag-consult din sa mga professionals throughout one's career. And that would be all. Thank you for listening.